appreciate everyone. Perfect. Eli, why don't you open us up with your first question?
Yeah, Coach Link, just wanted to ask you the roster limits and kind of eliminating walk-ons. It seems like it had a pretty big effect on kind of the specialists at large. Just, what was the impact? What was kind of going through that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality of it is it impacts the entire roster to a degree. Certainly at the specialist position, we'll carry probably about 3 less specialists than we typically have in the past. So, it's going to be more of a true, probably 2 deep at each position. And then, try to have a spare, right? Have a combo guy that can do both. And then try to have an emergency snapper, emergency holder. Just try to be prepared. A little bit more of a, I guess, NFL mindset when it comes to, worst case scenarios.
How difficult were those conversations of having to say, the number of spots available for this is changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard, right? Like, it's but unfortunately, it's part of the rules. We don't make the rules. We just have to adapt and adjust, and I think that's kind of been the theme with college football for the last probably 4 or 5 years, right? You just kind of adapt and adjust and give us the rules, give us the parameters, and then we got to go from there.
As far as this year's roster is concerned, what is kind of that? You mentioned the emergency plan there. What kind of is the backup plan to Blake a kicker, to Connor presumably a punter? It seems it is a little bit thin in those positions.
Yeah, I think in terms of we have 2 kickers. We have Blake Craig and Robert Meyer. And then, at punter, obviously Connor Wesselman's a kid we brought in from Stanford. Blake and Robert both have the ability to punt as well. And then we'll bring in at least one more guy to help in that area as well. And then from a snapping standpoint, Tommy Reese, who's a linebacker on our roster, is a guy that's been snapping really since last fall. And then we'll also bring in another new player in June.
Erik, what have been your impressions of Connor, just to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can tell that he's clearly got game experience. I think you can tell, just his approach. He's a very mature guy, high IQ guy, works on his craft, studies the game. I think he's really got a pro mindset and mentality when it comes to his approach and just how he works on a day-to-day basis. So he's been awesome to work with. I think he brings a level of maturity to that room, which is really, really good. Even though, Blake and Brett have both have a lot of game day experience, he's obviously brings, a different angle to that. He's also a great holder. So that brings a lot of value from that standpoint, brings a lot of security for Blake. He held for Josh Carty, who's an NFL kicker from Stanford, for a couple years. So a lot of really good game day experience in that arena as well.
Coach, how do you think Blake is different now than he was at this time last year?
I don't know that I would say different is the word I'd use to describe him. Blake's been a consummate professional. I mean, in terms of his work and how he goes about his business, he's been impressive with that since he got on campus as an early enrollee 2 years ago. It feels like he's been here for a lot longer than he really has. But just, I think he learned a lot, and to me, that's what happens, right? You win or you learn. And as a kicker, you either make the rep or you learn from the rep, right? And really, you learn from all your reps. But I think we've really zoned in on some specific focus areas for him and some areas that he can improve in. And I don't think it's any secret. When you look at the statistics and look at the numbers, there's very specific areas that he needs to improve in from an execution standpoint. And we've identified those, and we're working with him. And he's got a great positive mindset, and that's how we're approaching it.
What's that process like from taking the rep, learning from it, and developing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's a 365-day process, right? It's analyzing the kick, right, in the film room. It's starting from the basics, right? Okay, where's the spot? Is the spot in the correct spot, right? How are my steps? My steps back, my steps to the side, right? Is it a left hash kick? Is it a right hash kick? Is it a left middle? Is it a right middle? Is it straight on, right? And then having the same approach and being consistent. You would be shocked just how much, especially like with novice kickers, how much that can change. And when you do change that, like by inches, right? We're talking, it's a game of inches, right? It's in the margins. When you do change that, or it's not consistent, then now your steps get off, right? You get too tight to the ball, you jam yourself, or you're too far away from the ball on contact, right? All those things matter. And then there's a whole nother element when it comes to factoring in conditions, right? The outside elements, whether it's wind, we played a snow game this year, right? I mean, there's all kinds of different elements that you have to include. That's one of the things I love about this outdoor practice field. It seems like it's always windy. I've been here for 6 years. It's always windy. If it's 5 mile an hour winds at the south end zone or in the stadium, it's 10 mile an hour over here. So that's great. That's great for us to get that practice.
Coach Kevin Coleman averaged almost 10 yards per return last year. What is it about him that makes him such a viable punt returner?
Yeah, I mean, he's just super dynamic with the ball, right? He has great change of direction. He's got the make you miss that you're looking for. You want your punt returner to be able to make one miss for sure and get it started. But that is one area that we are being vigilant in spring and really focused on. It's an area that I think we can really improve in and make a difference for the team. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it, and that's our focus, that's our mindset. I think we brought 2 new really dynamic punt returners onto our roster, in Kevin and Sean Terry. Really excited about both of those guys.
And then going to kick return, Marquise and Josh was doing it a lot last year. Would you guys still keep, a couple starting receivers doing that job, or could we see some other guys get a chance at those roles?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we haven't even gotten into kickoff return yet this spring. But yeah, I think you're going to see some new faces back there. I think, I would be a fool not to have Marquise Johnson back there, because he does have explosive playability. I think we've seen that. I think you've seen that. Just got to be more consistent with it. And really, it's not just about the returner, right? The return game is so much about the other 10 that makes a huge difference. And the returner is obviously a big part of it. You want to have somebody back there that can be dynamic with the ball in their hands, but we're really focusing in on those other 10 guys in both return phases.
Coach, last year, Coach Drink talked about trying to eliminate trash yards on punt returns. What's the process like of actually trying to correct that and improving that going forward?
Yeah, I think, the first part of that is just really having a clear understanding with your punt returner going into each game of, okay, here's the punter's chart, right? Here's the opponent punter's chart. Okay, this is what he's averaging distance-wise. This is where his field zones are. Here's the tendencies they have by formation or by his alignment and where the ball's going. We try to, believe it or not, we try to communicate that to the returner on every rep as much as we possibly can. Some teams disguise it better than others. So that's the first thing, right, is understand, all right, this guy averages 45 yards a punt, so it's our job as coaches to put him in the right spot, right? That's number one. Number two is for the returner to be like, you got to be a little fearless back there, and you got to be willing and confident in your ability to go to run up on a short kick and make a fair catch and secure the ball, right? Or to go track a ball that's over your head, baseball turn, open your hips, track the ball, square your body underneath it, and make a catch. Whether it's a fair catch, whether it's a return opportunity, right? We got to be better in that area. And that's collectively. That starts with the coaches. That starts with myself, and then that goes down to the players and making good decisions, right? Because there are some balls that, hey, we get a late beat on. We can't track. Okay, let's live to fight another day. Let's not make the situation worse than it already is. But that to me is how you eliminate trash yards.
We've got time for one more.
Just to go back to the roster limit question a little bit earlier, how much are you handcuffed in the portal in the winter specifically by kind of the uncertainty around when the rule change is going to come into place, what the rule change is going to be? Is it something where you have to wait for the spring a little bit more to start really honing in on what you can do in the portal?
I don't think it affects what we're doing in the portal at all. I think, there's I mean, we're operating as if that's the rule and that's what it's going to be. And I think we thought that it was fair to explain to our roster where they're currently at and let those guys after the season make a decision on what's best for their future. So I don't think it handcuffs us in the portal, or it did handcuff us in the portal at all. I think we move forward as hey, we got to build a roster with 105 eventually, which, you know, I believe that has to be in place maybe August 1st. I'm not exactly, don't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure what that date is, but it's sometime down the road.
Great. Thank you, Coach.
All right, thanks guys.